WEBCON is unique, weirdly enough, because it is the one workflow product that puts the process first. Sounds pretty strange, but I can prove it really easily. If you use just about anyone else, the very first thing you do is not even done within that product. Somewhere else, you go ahead and build database tables or SharePoint lists or other content in another place. And you're essentially modeling your data before you know what you're going to do with it. And that's kind of crazy. Well, WEBCON allows you to do, we can do it that way, but we'd rather you said, what is it I'm trying to accomplish? Let's model out the process. And now that I know what it is I want to do, now I'll tell you what fields I'm going to need and what data types they are and so on. And once we know what data you need and what it is you want to do with it, we'll build you the forms automatically. And then, yes, of course, you can customize them, but we'll give you even one extra thing. If you tell us which fields you need during which step of the process, and we'll go ahead and tell the form what to conceal, what to reveal, what to make read-only, what to make read-write, what to make required. With just about everybody else, you've got to independently in the form do all of that with formulas or rules or other things, and keep that in sync manually with what's going on in your workflow design. Not with WEBCON BPS. We make the process tell the user interface what to do. The moment you start using it, you'll see the difference, and it will be really hard to do anything else, because it's frankly fantastic. At WEBCON, it's hard not to lead, with our number one selling point being that we embrace change and we assume applications change all the time. There's so much more going on in WEBCON BPS that's worth talking about, but yeah, the change stuff is unique and really cool. Essentially, look, I don't care how good you are at this, your applications are going to go through repeated adjustments. Either you forgot something, or you did something incorrectly, or your users and stakeholders forgot to tell you something, or everybody did their job perfectly, but things changed in your environment, in your world, and now you have new requirements. Stuff changes all the time. So what WEBCON did is assumed that that would be the norm, not the exception. And everything in WEBCON is done with the assumption that it won't be permanent. So if you need to make changes to data types, it ripples through to the forms immediately. And if the data is being used in branching conditions or referenced inside the workflow process itself, that adapts quickly too. If you make changes to the process flow, the form buttons and everything else adapts quickly. Everything is connected to everything, which means you only need to make a change in one place. You will not need to remember to keep everything in sync because everything is in sync. The other thing I'd say is we can change locations easily. When you deploy us from one place to another, which is really easy, we can have in the application configuration notes that in the development option, we connect to that database. In the test option, it's this database. And in production, it's over there, which means when you deploy, you don't need to stop and redo all the connections to make sure they're correct. In the deployment, we make sure everything is correct. That's a big deal. Change is clear too, because everything that gets reused, when I say like a business rule or a data source or a connection or one process that is used by other processes, when you want to see what'll be affected by a change in it, with one click, you will know that a change to this affects that and that and that. It's really, really convenient. And the other thing is, and this is the biggest deal, change is instant. So we can modify work that's already running. It's a pretty rare feature in any product, but we're really good at it. So if you've got 500 instances of a workflow process running at the moment and you need to make a fundamental change to it, it's okay. That change will ripple through And you don't need to recall everything and restart it, or you don't need to accept that those 500 instances are already going to be obsolete when they finish. You can have your cake and eat it too. It's a wonderful feeling. It's instant change. We've trademarked it, and customers and partners love it. WEBCON is flexible too, and this is more about the company than necessarily any product we produce, but we work very hard to be pretty flexible in the way we work with you, whether you're a customer, a partner, an individual, what have you. We've made sure that instead of 30-day trials, and we do those, some people want them, we actually have an express version of the software that you can install and use in production. I mean, it's limited to 10 gigabytes, but it really works. It's not feature reduced or anything like that. You can subscribe to our software or buy it. There's feature parity between our on-premises version, yep, we run on-premises, and our cloud versions. And yes, that's a plural. We have two ways to deploy in the cloud. We have a multi-tenant software as a service offering, and we also have a dedicated offering you can embed inside of your Azure tenant. Depending on how you want to deploy, one or the other is more attractive. But again, flexibility is the watchword here. One license applies to all three places. And like I said, you can buy it or subscribe to it. One way or another, you're going to find a way to pay us the least amount of money possible, and we don't mind. WEBCON BPS is extremely integrated. And let's break down what we mean by that. The first thing is it's one integrated development environment. If you look at what just about everyone else does, they've got one tool set for creating forms, a different designer for creating any kind of workflow or automation pattern, yet something else for modeling data. In fact, usually the data has to be done in advance somewhere else, like database tables or SharePoint lists or something like that. You're not building one application. If you're lucky, you might be able to gather together those discrete elements and then package them as an application, but they certainly weren't built that way, other than maybe in your head. We give you one integrated designer studio. You design the workflow in there, you design the forms in there, you design the data in there, you design the reports, the dashboards, any rules, any connections. It's all one integrated environment where everything talks to everything. So that when you change the workflow, the forms update. When you change the data, everything updates accordingly. It's integrated in a way that really, really matters. And when you go to deploy it, it's one package. The whole thing comes along for the ride. In fact, our forms, integrated content, is a way to describe our forms. It's not just a window into lots of data that lives in other places. It's a coherent package. It includes master data, detailed data, data being fetched from external sources and recorded so we have a snapshot of what it looked like. It might have comments, attached files, attached emails. It's pretty much everything you need, and it's in one place, and it is archivable as a set. It's versioned as a set. When you need to go through the audit trail, you'll see the changes to every single element. It is designed. It's designed for you. It's designed so that if you need to migrate it or if you need to do anything to it, you're not running around chasing data from lots and lots of different places. Clarity and communication matter a lot to any application. I want to know how it works, which kind of means you need to document it, and that's never fun. Unless, of course, you've got WEBCON BPS, because you can generate complete documentation for your application with 2 clicks. We grab all the metadata on any application and produce a Word document that pretty thoroughly describes everything going on. I haven't seen other people do this, or at least do it well, and WEBCON has nailed this. And the other thing is, if you look at a WEBCON diagram, it's really easy to read and really easy to understand. It's somewhat high level. It describes what's going on. For example, we start with somebody submitting a request. It goes through a management review, then it goes through a subject matter review, then it goes through a divisional head review or something to that effect. And then it's either accepted or it is returned to the original author for changes or something to that effect. Those are the thing I'm describing. That's what you see on the diagram. What you don't see are cluttery things like add two numbers together, or sort an array, or send an email, or determine who the next task assignee is. It's not like we don't do that. We just don't put that at the top of the diagram and clutter up what's going on with how it's going on. If you open the individual items in a diagram, yeah, you can see all of the details about what happens when. But what we've effectively done is made a diagram that you can read and a diagram you can use. If you didn't have us, you'd be using one product to actually draw out your application design and a different product to draw a simplified version of it to communicate with regular human beings. With us, it's one diagram that does it all. Saves time, and again, when you inevitably need to make changes, you're only making them in one place. Not everybody handles measurement and metrics and auditing and all that the same way. I'm really fond of the way WEBCON has chosen to do it, because we certainly have monitoring statistics at your fingertips, like server health and how many things are running and so on. That's all important. To me, that's table stakes. Everyone should be doing that. What we also add are business value metrics as to how much money is at stake as you go through this, or how long does it take to complete a particular stage within a workflow. And yes, other people do that, but you have to do a lot of extra work to make your workflow collect that. We do it automatically as part of our design. It doesn't take you extra work or extra time or extra effort to get pretty serious metrics that you can use to make decisions, not so much as to whether your workflow is running, but whether or not your workflow is doing what you want it to or making a difference. This is important. We also care a lot here at WEBCON about auditing, which is why the audit trail for something is not a couple of rows inside of a database table. We actually package all the auditing information about a running process with the process. So you've got the data, you've got the way the forms looked at any given point in time, you've got all the attachments, you've got all the comments, you've got everything, including the current status of the workflow and its entire history. You can archive that as a set. You can migrate that as a set. Nothing gets lost because we consider auditing to be a first-class need for any application. One big differentiator between automation and business process management would be, again, amongst many other things, that it's not just about approvals. Tasks can be pretty complex beasts, and a simple approval over something is possibly the simplest kind of task I can imagine. You're making a single decision about something that exists somewhere else and recording that decision, and that's it. But a task might involve a decision, but it might also involve being shown input germane to that decision as part of that task. It might also be collecting more input as part of that task. In other words, a task is an invitation to participate, not just validate. And a task might have subtasks, and there might be roll-up logic. Well, tell me whether you think this is a common scenario. I route something around from department to department to get buy-in, but every time it stops at a department, the head of that department fans it out to their subordinates to get input as to what they think the decision should be. It's a pretty common scenario, actually. And if I just think about a simple approval as I move something along, I'm going to miss out on that. So tasks have roll-up logic. Tasks have delegation logic. Tasks are a big, fat, hairy deal. And business process solutions like WEBCON BPS get this and handle it very, very nicely. WEBCON's workflow engine is fundamentally different from just about everyone else's. And I've thought long and hard about how to describe this in a way that wouldn't sound really geeky. I'm going to try this. With just about everyone else, you could imagine a conveyor belt and people dropping activities to be performed on the conveyor belt, and they move along the conveyor belt until they're done, and then they fall off into a hopper, get boxed up and sent away or something to that effect. But once it's on the conveyor belt, you can't change it. And if too many things are on the conveyor belt, it breaks down. And the goal is to get it off the conveyor belt as quickly as possible so that more stuff can be done, which means a long-running process is an error condition, or at least an exception condition, which is why, for example, flows don't run for more than 30 days. It's not because anyone's short-sighted, it's because by design, automation activity is meant to be finite. If it takes too long, something's wrong. We're a little different. What I'd like you to imagine is a waiting room. There's a desk where someone calls your number, you go up to the desk, they tell you what to do, you do it, and then you sit back down. You've got a file folder with you that contains a history of everything you've done so far. Now, the payoff to that is every person or everything sitting in that waiting room is a running process. Being called up to the desk and being told what to do next means that we can change your instructions at any time. It also means you can sit down in a comfy chair for as long as you need to until you're called again. It's also much cheaper to build extra rows of chairs than it is extra conveyor belts. Now, if that's a little bit too abstract, so be it. But essentially it means our engine allows you to change stuff in midstream. Our engine allows you to have processes that run for years if necessary. Our engine allows for massive scalability because unless something is actively happening in this moment, it's completely at rest. So we scale, we're flexible, and we can run things from nanoseconds to decades if necessary. And that's a real payoff to the WEBCON BPS workflow engine.